can find the future inside of me. I can find my promise, deepest parts of me. I can find my promise.
Welcome to the It's All About Pink Love podcast with Dr. Renair, the Pink Love Specialist.
Deepest parts of me. Arising from the dead to find the spirit inside myself. Taking love to the deepest parts of me. There's a power, the energy in my soul that sets me free. My heart is open for the heavens which supplies my source. And it's here. I can find my promise. I can find my future so clear. I can find my promise inside of me. I can find the future to the deepest parts of me. I can find the future inside.
Welcome to episode 6 of It's All About Pink Love. Today we are talking about It Won't Be Here. Again, my name is Dr. Renair. I am the Pink Love Specialist, and I am so honored and grateful to be with you today. Before we begin, I would like to thank everyone for their birthday wishes, all the DMs, calls, text messages, all those wonderful technological advancements that allow people to reach me exactly where I am. I just want to say thank you. It was one of my best birthdays ever. Turning 45 already looks amazing, and I am so glad, as I said last time, that I get to take this journey with you. I don't know if you know this. If you follow me on social media, you've already seen the pictures. I spent my holiday in Canada, but it wasn't even in Canada. How about that? In Buffalo, New York. Well, it's not really considered Buffalo, New York, so I don't want anybody to kick me. It was Niagara Falls, New York, to spend my birthday, to celebrate it, to kick it off. It was amazing. I went on a 5-mile walk. That part wasn't amazing. But because you know what it was? I don't think any of us expected it to be a walking tour. I think we thought it was like a riding tour or a boat tour. So to be walking through Niagara State Park for almost 5 miles, although I will tell you that Dan, who was our tour guide, was amazing. And amazing is my word of the day, by the way, so I just need you to know that. Was amazing. And just looking at all of the beautiful majesties that the Most High has created, or the process of erosion has created, it was just breathtaking. So did this 5-mile walk around State Niagara Park, looking at Niagara State Park. Let me get it together. So I don't want somebody to write me saying, you just messed it all up, so I'm getting it together. And and looking at all of the waterfalls, the Cave of the Winds, Horseshoe Falls, all of that, it was just like, it just reminded me of how life differs, how life changes, the beauty that comes from the process. And I guess you may say, well, what does that have to do with things? The beauty that comes from the process. One of the things that Dan said to us as we were touring around was that Niagara Falls did not look like that 1,000 years ago. It didn't look like that. Matter of fact, a 1,000 years before that, it wasn't even there in the same form, in the same way. It was the water, the erosion that was being caused by the water that began to create what we've come to know as Niagara Falls. And I thought that was just astounding. But at the same time, he said, what we're looking at today won't be here in 1,000 years. It will look different. And all I kept thinking is, it won't be here. There won't be anyone that's going to look at the Niagara Falls that I looked at this weekend in 1,000 years, but the "it won't be here" started echoing out to me because there are so many things in life that when they were happening, I thought it was the end. You couldn't tell me that they weren't going to come and put a jacket on me with the hooks on the back and put me in a little padded room. And to be honest, there was a point in my life when I wasn't quite in the jacket with the hooks in the padded room, but I still was in a mental institution dealing with a nervous breakdown when I was 25 years old. And I just turned 45. Here we go. It's almost 20 years later. And so I wanted to talk to you today from the place of the process and understanding that it won't be here. What is happening today? What is stressing you today? What is worrying you today? What is holding you down today won't be here. It won't be here. So a year from now, you can look back on this moment and be like, wow, that was a pivotal moment for me. That was what changed my life. And just to think, I was ready to give up when that happened this time last year. So let me be perfectly honest with you, because a lot of times people meet me and they talk to me and they go, I can't believe that you got over that. I can't believe you persevered through that. And you're so resilient. You're so this, you're so that. And although I appreciate those amazing compliments, because trust me, when it was happening, I didn't feel resilient. I didn't feel like I was persevering. I didn't feel like I was overcoming anything. If anything, it felt like the world was on my shoulders. So I have a hard time taking credit for being resilient when I know, and I'm going to get a little spiritual today, but God, I know if it had not been for my Creator, I might not have had the strength to bring it through. I know that if a circle of friends, an amazing pit crew had not been placed in my life, I might not have made it through. If I had not had the lessons, hear me, the lessons from the last thing I went through, I might not have made it through that. See, one of the things that keeps coming up for me when I'm struggling, and I don't use the word struggling often because struggling is so heavy, it almost makes it seem like you can't break free, right? So when I think about the moments that were the hardest for me, that were the most challenging for me, the thing that comes up for me is that I had a marker to refer back to. Recently, I went through some issues, and we've talked about them on the last show, so I won't rehash them. But I had to remember that the last time I went through something similar, I was able to get through. I had to remind myself that it won't always be here. This thing won't always be here. All it takes is a shift. All it takes is a shift in the life that you live for you to understand that what is happening may not be here. What you're going through this week you may not be going through that next week. Now it may be something else, but it might not be. And so when you have this mentality that, one of the things my family members used to say, and some of them still do, is if it ain't one thing, it's another. Being raised on that, if it ain't one thing, it's another thing, it's a thing, it's another thing. It began to make me prepare always for the other. So inside of that, now I when I was listening to Dan talk, and he shared that what was there then was not going to be there tomorrow or next week. Even the smallest shifts and changes, every time that water goes over those rocks, there's an erosion process that happens. There's a breaking down process that happens. And inside of the breaking down, it opens up for something else to exist. There is someone today, and I'm telling you that I know I sound a little bit more different, a little bit more hype, a little bit more up, but the truth is I had an epiphany on top of the waterfall. Like people get epiphanies on top of the mountain. I got an epiphany on top of the waterfall. That what was happening for me, the thing that had me beat, the thing that had me, made me feel like I was beat, the thing that had me depressed, the thing that had been holding me inside of this sadness as I entered a new chapter of my life, these things were not going to be there. The pain of it was not going to be there. And even if there was still a sadness, how I operated in it was going to be different. Sometimes we have to remember that we make the small shifts and changes. Maybe you can't visit this person's social media page all the time if you know that it's going to hurt you. Maybe you can't keep calling that friend who's not answering your call if it is going to hurt you. Maybe you cannot go into work and, because you have an attitude with your job, you can't go in there with an attitude all day because it is going to eventually hurt you. Next thing you know, you're going to be sitting in front of human resources and they're going to be saying that we've noticed a shift in you, we've noticed a change in you, and then you're going to have another situation. There's something to be said for how we let, not if we let, for how we let external circumstances affect us. The bottom line is this. If you are a person that can say that you are honestly never affected by the things that happen in your external circumstances, then right now I'm going to tell you to pat yourself on the back. I will get up from this computer and clap for you. At the end of the day, I will celebrate you because I'm going to be truthful with you. I'm not there. There are some things that bother me less than it did 5 years ago as I continue to grow and evolve. But for the most part, there are certain things that still affect me, that still enter my atmosphere. No matter how much I pray, no matter how much I meditate, no matter how much I read all these self-development help books, no matter how much I write self-development help books, no matter what I do, there are certain things that still affect me. And it doesn't make me bad. It doesn't make me weak. It doesn't make me anything other than understanding that I have a say in the way external things affect me. Not the way they affect you, but the way that they affect me. And I can then choose to make some small shifts and choices in my life to help foster the outcome that I want to see happen. And when I'm talking about changes, it could be something as simple as when you wake up in the morning, you don't immediately jump on social media. That you take some time to take a breath, give gratitude for your day. If you pray, pray. If you meditate, meditate. If you do neither one of those things, just sit in a moment, take a breath, and be still and be grateful for the new awakening, for the chance to have a new day. And if you're in a depressed mode and waking up is like the worst thing that could have happened for you, then you maybe use that morning time to get on the line, call the suicide hotline, call a friend, call a religious leader, a spiritual leader. Like, I don't want to make it sound like that it's all bells, roses, Skittles, and rainbows. Like, I don't want to make it sound like that. And I don't want to make someone sound like they're less of a person if it's not all those things. Some days we have a day. Some days we have emotions that we are trying to outswim that may feel like we're drowning, and that's okay. At the end of it all, the most important part of it is that it is authentic to how you're feeling and where you are in your space. That it is truthful to where you need to be. Because that is the most important. How it affects you and how you operate in what affects you. So going back to the conversation of it won't always be here. Like, what do you do in the between time? And what do you do to show up for yourself in the most authentic way? Especially when the process sucks. And if when I used to be in church, it was always weird to me because for like the first few years, every time I would get prophesied to, the first thing they would say is trust the process. And for those of you that may not know what it means to be prophesied to inside of a church, there's usually a voice of foresight, whether it's a prophet, whether it's a seer, but someone who is speaking into your life for what spirit, the message spirit has given to them to give to you. And so every time I would hear the P word, I would be like, oh, like, I don't hate many things in life, but sometimes the process simply just sucks. And in trying to learn how to navigate within the process has been harder because I'm a person that typically likes to be in control, that likes to know what's going to happen, likes to know what's happening. Even if it's not something that necessarily feels good to me, I like to know. So when I have to lean into this space of not knowing, is very difficult for me because I have to have a certain level of trust and a certain level of faith. And it seems like, I'm going to be honest with you, here's my transparent moment. It seems like the moment that I stop leaning into my faith is the moment that everything just spins out of control. Because I start putting my hand in the cookie jar. Like, I need to know what's inside the cookie jar to see what it tastes like, because I know what it looks like. Have you ever had a cookie? Let me tell you something. So my mother, when I was growing up, my mom, when I was growing up, used to get these daggone ginger snap cookies, right? And so when I was a kid, every time I would look into the cookies, we had a clear see-through cookie jar. And every time I would look in this cookie jar, I would see these chocolate-looking, moist cookies. They were nice and big, because now back then ginger snaps was a little bit bigger than what they are now, but they were nice and big. And I would always smell this spicy scent, kind of reminded me a little bit of Christmas. And I would look at it. And one day I decided to get me one of those good looking cookies. I didn't know they were ginger snaps. Had I known they were ginger snaps, I might have paid a little bit attention to the name, but I was a kid, I'm just looking at the cookie. Well, honey, I took the cookie out the jar and went to bite into this soft chocolate thingy. What? That thing almost broke every tooth in my mouth. I had no idea that ginger snaps were a hard cookie. And when I say hard, I'm not talking about like it was hard. I'm talking about, like, again, almost broke my tooth. Now, I'm not saying that they had not been in there for a minute, because I can't quite remember, because that's one of her primary cookies that she would purchase. But what I can say is that I was not prepared for the snap. I was not prepared for it to be a hard cookie because it looked soft. And so I then learned that everything that looks like what you think it is not. I don't know. I'm on cookies for some reason. I must be hungry. It's early, so I must be wanting a snack. But here's the truth. I mean, it's the same difference. I've been someplace and thought I was getting a chocolate chip cookie, and it was an oatmeal raisin cookie. Hurt feelings, because I don't particularly care for oatmeal raisin cookies. So anyway, because I'm probably making you hungry while you listen. So I just want to say that it began to the understanding of it won't be here. When Dan said it, it just spoke to me. It vibrated a certain kind of way that I was on top of that waterfall, able to let go of what felt like an eternal pain. When you have certain trauma, when it is triggered by everyday activities or the things that happen in life, sometimes it has a ringing, like a vibration that feels not just familiar, but it makes you start to question, will I ever get over this? why am I still affected by this? I told one of my clients a few days ago that the universe is going to test you. When you say that you are over something, that you are healed from something, you will be tested on it. So for me, I in standing in that moment, I realized that I was being tested on a traumatic response that I typically have around the conversation of abandonment. B, I was also being triggered around conversations with money because certain things were shifting in my life as it related to money. And I had always, growing up, not had the best experiences with money. And then finally, I realized that I was being triggered around timeline. Because sometimes when we look back over our lives and we think about where we thought we would be at certain ages in our life, the thing that comes up the most is, well, I'm not where I thought I would be, and and my life is not great because I'm not where I thought I would be. So when I had this moment of clarity, this moment of understanding like where I was in that second and what all was being triggered for me and what all I was unpacking. Because when you get a trigger, what starts to happen, if you know it's a trigger, because, and maybe one day I'll talk about understanding how to identify what a trigger is in a little bit more detail, but I'm going to tell you right now that a trigger is something that sets off a wave of something else. So if you know throughout your life you have had issues around abandonment, right? And I'm going to use that as an example. Someone abruptly leaving your life can trigger emotions that you did not expect to happen. If you have issues around the concept of money and thinking that maybe growing up you were of lower income and could not get the things that you liked and get the things that you desired, if you are older and then you reach a certain level of success, but then maybe lose your job or maybe have a divorce or something that shifts your economical status, what will happen is it may trigger this feeling, this fear of what you experienced not having money. And so you may find yourself having massive anxiety or massive panic attacks around this issue with your money changing because you know that in the past that was something that was very impacting to you growing up. So that's how triggers show up. And so a lot of times when something happens, especially when you have gotten to a certain age, this, I always chuckle about songs when I hear now to this point, like all the songs that are coming out have samples from music when I was growing up. And even those songs had samples from music when the older generation was growing up. Like there's nothing new under the sun. So a lot of times when things are happening and you are reacting from a place of emotion and anger or disappointment and bitterness and this, that, and the third, it's coming because something internally inside of you was triggered. So I say all that to say, standing on top of that waterfall, when he said it won't be here in 1,000 years, it will look different in 1,000 years beyond that, I started feeling a piece of joy, an element of hope, because I'm reminded that the things that I experienced 5 years ago are no longer here. Not even the lessons learned are still here. But the thing that I thought I would never heal from, I've been able to find healing around. The thing that was supposed to, and we say in church, the thing that was supposed to kill me, right? I'm still here. So there's a blessing in understanding the principle that what is today will not be tomorrow. And even if the actual situation is still lasting tomorrow, what is happening around it is different. You might have a different emotion. I often talk about grief not being linear. We know that there are all these stages of grief. And so when we read about them, we expect them to show up as 1 this, 2 this, 3 this. But anyone that has had any experiences with grief and is still living with the experience of grief, know that that thing can be a circle. It can be a line. It might be a triangle. Sometimes it's just a bunch of scribbly doodles all over the place, because you never know where you're going to land when you're dealing with things around grief. And so the same thing applies when you're dealing with things, circumstances as they're happening in that moment, because there's a truth to remembering that it won't always be here. There's a hope in that. There's a hope in that. Like, I feel happy that to know that what I'm experiencing right now may not always be so. And that if I participate in working through the issues that are coming up, and you notice I said, if I participate. See, a lot of times people think healing is magic, puff, puff, poof. And I'm just over it, like a bippity boppity boo. Like, I'm just over it. And that's not always how that works. There's a choice. Amen. There's a choice for participating in your healing, doing the things that you need to do so that you can move from the place that you're in. If you're in a space where you need healing or desire healing and you're fine being in the space where you are for now, you need to sit with it. You need to feel it. You need to touch it and understand it. Then that's okay too. Just don't stay there. Like, I'm not a fan of telling people to skip over things that require them to be in it. Because eventually it surfaces back up. Eventually it comes back. So I want to tell you, if you need to sit in it, sit in it. But as you continue to sit in it, begin to participate in moving forward. Begin to participate in achieving your healing. Begin to participate in lifting to something better. And so on that mountaintop of the waterfall, I made a decision to participate in having a different kind of experience. I may not be able to change it, but I can change me. So in having to have the moment to have a different type of experience inside of it, I just left my stuff on the mountain. I just left myself on the trail. I left my stuff at the waterfall. I left my stuff on the Made of Mist boat ride that took me down into the water so that I can experience the fullness of what was happening. Watching that water gush over the edge reminded me that things just, as massive as they can be, there's still a flow. Hallelujah. As massive as they can be, that there is still a flow. There's still a place for it to go. As massive as that issue may seem for you, there's still a place to go. It still has a place to go. There is still a flow. In the bigness of it, there's still a flow. Even if you can't see where the water is going to end up, if it's going to end up in one space or if it's going to go out into the world, no matter what you know about your situation, there is a flow. So thank you again for giving me of your time today. It is my deepest prayer and my deepest wish for you that no matter what comes your way, no matter how massive it is, that it can remain in a flow, that you can understand that what's happening today will not, cannot, won't be happening next week. Even if it looks similar, it will not be exactly the same. You have a choice to participate in your healing. You have a choice to participate in how things serve up for you, and you have a choice in believing that it won't always be here. So I thank you. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your presence today. And I will say to you that even in the darkest moment, even when you can't see the end, remember that you are blessed and that it is all about pink love. Until we speak again, continue blessings to you.
Thank you for joining Dr. Renair today. For ways to stay connected, please visit www.pinklovewellness.com. You can also follow her on social media. She is Renair Amen everywhere.
I can find my promise.